They say success is the best revenge, but sometimes revenge is a dish best served with a side of billionaire status. When Derek Caldwell sent that invitation, he thought he was summoning a ghost. He thought he was inviting his broken, discarded ex-wife to his lavish baby shower just to show her exactly what she had lost. He wanted an audience for his happily ever after. He expected tears. He expected envy. What he didn't expect was for her to walk through those doors on the arm of the man who owned the company Derek worked for. This is the story of how a public humiliation turned into the most satisfying corporate takedown in New York history. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy stock, with gold leaf edges that practically screamed new money. It sat on the polished mahogany surface of Sarah Jenkins's desk like an unexploded landmine. She didn't need to open it to know who it was from. The calligraphy, looping, excessive, pretentious, was undoubtedly the work of a high-end stationer in the Upper East Side, likely Papier and Kebekza, the kind of place Derek had always claimed was too expensive when they were married. Sarah took a sip of her lukewarm coffee, the bitter taste grounding her. It had been 3 years. 3 years since Derek Caldwell had looked her in the eye in their cramped apartment in Queens and told her she lacked ambition. 3 years since he admitted he'd been seeing Tiffany, the 22-year-old receptionist at his mid-tier marketing firm, Sterling and Cooper. He had left Sarah with nothing but a maxed-out credit card debt he'd secretly racked up in her name and a shattered sense of self-worth. She slit the envelope open with a silver letter opener. Mr. Derek Caldwell and Mrs. Tiffany Caldwell cordially invite you to celebrate the impending arrival of their son. Date: Saturday, October 14th. Location: the Kensington Estate, the Hamptons. Registry: Neiman Marcus. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. Derek's handwriting. Sharp, jagged, aggressive. Sarah, thought you might want to see what a real family looks like. Come for the free food. I know things have been tough for you. D. Sarah laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound that echoed slightly in the quiet of the office. It was classic Derek. He wasn't content with winning. He needed his opponent to lose, and he needed to watch them do it. He assumed she was still the struggling freelance graphic designer he'd left behind, scraping by on commissions, living in that drafty studio on 4th Street. He assumed she was still the woman who clipped coupons and apologized for taking up space. He had no idea. The door to her office clicked open. Sarah didn't look up immediately. She was on the 42nd floor of the Blackwood Tower in Manhattan. You didn't just walk into this office unless you were very important or very lost. Bad news? A deep baritone voice asked. Sarah looked up. Standing in the doorway was Adrian Blackwood. At 38, Adrian was the sort of man who made suits look like armor. He was the CEO of Blackwood Global, a conglomerate that had its hands in everything from renewable energy to high-stakes venture capital. He was also, technically, Sarah's boss. But executive assistant was a title that didn't quite cover the reality. In the last 2 years, Sarah had become his right hand, his strategist, and the only person who could talk him out of, or into, a hostile takeover. Not news, Sarah said, flicking the heavy card across the desk toward him. History. Adrian walked over, picking up the invitation with long, elegant fingers. He scanned it, a single eyebrow arching upward. He read the handwritten note aloud, his voice devoid of emotion, but heavy with judgment. Come for the free food. Charming fellow. This is the ex-husband? The one and only, Sarah said, leaning back in her Herman Miller chair. He thinks I'm destitute. He wants me to come so he can introduce me to his wealthy friends as a cautionary tale. Don't be like Sarah, or you'll end up alone and hungry. And are you going? Absolutely not, Sarah said, reaching for the card to throw it in the trash. I have the Q3 reports to finalize for the board meeting in Tokyo, and quite frankly, I'd rather scrub the floors of Grand Central Station with a toothbrush than watch Derek gloat. Adrian didn't let go of the card. He held it out of her reach, his dark eyes studying her face. There was a glimmer there, a spark of mischief that the business world rarely saw. To the public, Adrian Blackwood was a cold, calculating machine. To Sarah, he was surprisingly human, protective, and occasionally dangerously impulsive. The Kensington estate, Adrian mused. That's a rental property. Nice enough if you like faux French architecture and overpriced catering. I believe Blackwood Global actually owns the parent company of the realty group that manages it. Adrian, give it back. Sarah, he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping an octave. You have been working 80-hour weeks for 2 years. You have single-handedly restructured our logistics division. You saved the merger with Harrison and Partners. You are not destitute. You are one of the most capable women in this city. Why let him believe otherwise? Because I don't care what he thinks, Sarah lied. Liar, Adrian said softly. He walked around the desk and placed the invitation gently in front of her. He hurt you. He humiliated you. And now he wants to do it again publicly. If you don't go, he spins the narrative that you were too ashamed to show your face. If you go alone, he attacks you. So it's a lose-lose, Sarah said, staring at the gold script. Not necessarily. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks. They were platinum, engraved with the Blackwood family crest. The invite says +1, does it not? Sarah looked at the envelope, Ms. Sarah Jenkins, and guessed. It does. But I don't have a guest. I don't have time for dating, Adrian, you know that. I'm married to this job. Adrian smirked, a dangerous, wolfish grin that usually signaled a competitor was about to be liquidated. Then bring your work with you. I have an opening in my schedule on the 14th. The Tokyo board meeting isn't until the 16th. We can take the helicopter to the Hamptons. Sarah stared at him. Her heart did a traitorous little flip in her chest. You? You want to go to a suburban baby shower in the Hamptons to... what? Eat tiny sandwiches? I want to go, Adrian said, his eyes locking onto hers, intense and serious. To remind Mr. Caldwell that while he may be playing checkers, you are playing chess. And also, he paused, checking his Rolex. I hear the crab cakes at the Kensington are decent. He will think you're my boss, Sarah warned. He'll make jokes about me being a secretary. Let him, Adrian said. Correcting him will be the best part. Sarah looked at the invitation again. The dread that had pooled in her stomach began to dissipate, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She thought about Derek's sneer. She thought about Tiffany's fake sympathy. She thought about the years she spent building Derek up, editing his resumes, ironing his shirts, only to be traded in the moment he got a promotion. She looked up at Adrian. Pick me up at 10? I'll pick you up at 9, Adrian corrected. We need to stop at Van Cleef & Arpels first. If we are going to do this, Sarah, we are not just attending. We are invading. The Hamptons in October was a display of aggressive wealth. The trees were turning a picturesque burning orange, the air was crisp, and the driveways were filled with Range Rovers and Porsches. The Kensington estate was exactly as Adrian had described it, a sprawling, white-columned monstrosity that tried too hard to look like Versailles, but ended up looking like a very expensive wedding cake. Inside the main ballroom, Derek Caldwell was in his element. He wore a linen suit that was a shade too light for the season, holding a glass of champagne as if it were a scepter. He was the center of attention, surrounded by his colleagues from Sterling and Cooper and Tiffany's entourage of perfectly coiffed friends. Tiffany sat on a velvet throne, literally a rented throne, surrounded by piles of gifts wrapped in silver and blue. She looked radiant in that meticulously curated way that took 3 hours of professional makeup to achieve. "Is she coming?" Tiffany whispered loudly to Derek, leaning over. "You said she was coming. It's almost noon." Derek swirled his drink, checking his watch. "She'll be here. She can't resist. Sarah always had a masochistic streak. Besides, I know she needs the networking. I heard she was temping at some law firm last year. She's probably hoping I can get her a referral." "You're so generous, babe," Tiffany cooed, patting his arm. "I just want closure," Derek said, loudly enough for his boss, Mr. Henderson, to hear. "It's important to be kind to those we leave behind. Sarah, well, she struggled with the pressure of my career. Not everyone is cut out for this lifestyle." Mr. Henderson, a stout man with a red face, nodded sagely. "You're a good man, Derek. Takes a big heart to invite the ex. Very big heart." "I just hope she doesn't cause a scene," Derek added, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "She can be a bit emotional. Unstable, really. That's why I had to leave, for my own mental health." A murmur of sympathy went through the circle. Derek basked in it. He had crafted this narrative perfectly. In his version of the story, Sarah was the anchor dragging him down, the hysterical woman who couldn't support his dreams. He was the survivor. Outside, the gravel crunch of tires announced a new arrival. But this wasn't the polite crunch of a sedan. It was the heavy, distinctive hum of a custom engine. The conversation in the ballroom lulled as guests turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. A sleek, midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom had pulled up to the valet stand. It was a car that cost more than the entire Kensington estate rental fee. "Who is that?" Tiffany asked, frowning. "Did we invite anyone from the board?" Derek squinted. "I don't think so. Maybe it's the caterer?" "No, caterers don't drive Phantoms." The driver's door opened, and a uniformed chauffeur stepped out. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the rear door. First, a pair of heels hit the gravel. Christian Louboutin. So Kate 120s in nude, unmistakable by the red sole. Then, legs. Then Sarah Jenkins emerged. She was wearing a structured cream dress by Victoria Beckham that fit her like a second skin, elegant and powerful. Her hair, usually tied back in a messy bun during her marriage to Derek, was now a glossy cascade of waves over one shoulder. She wore oversized sunglasses, which she removed slowly, revealing eyes that were clear, sharp, and confident. A hush fell over the room. Derek choked on his champagne. "Is that Sarah?" someone whispered. "No way," another replied. "Sarah Jenkins. She looks expensive." But the show wasn't over. The chauffeur moved to the other side of the car, but the door opened from the inside before he could get there. Adrian Blackwood stepped out. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that was tailored to perfection. No tie, the top button of his shirt undone in a display of casual arrogance. He put on his sunglasses, scanned the facade of the building with a critical sneer, and then walked around the car to Sarah. He didn't just walk next to her. He offered her his arm. "Ready?" Adrian asked, his voice low. "Showtime," Sarah whispered. They walked up the grand staircase toward the entrance. The valet, a young kid who looked terrified of the car, stammered, "Sir, do you have a ticket?" Adrian tossed the keys to the boy without looking at him. "Keep it close. We won't be staying long." As they entered the ballroom, the silence was deafening. It wasn't just that Sarah looked good. It was the aura she projected. The Sarah that Derek knew walked with her head down, apologizing for existing. This woman walked with a stride that commanded the room to part for her. Derek recovered from his shock, his ego kicking into overdrive. He handed his glass to Tiffany and marched towards them, a fake plastic smile plastered on his face. He needed to regain control. He needed to belittle her before everyone realized she was outshining the bride. "Sarah," Derek boomed, opening his arms as if to hug her, though he stopped a few feet away when he saw Adrian's cold stare. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd be able to afford the trip out here, gas prices and all." He laughed. A few of his sycophants chuckled nervously. Sarah didn't flinch. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Derek. Tiffany. Congratulations." Derek looked at Adrian, sizing him up. He didn't recognize him. Derek was a mid-level manager in marketing. He dealt with vendors and regional sales directors. He didn't deal with the gods of high finance. To him, Adrian was just some guy in a nice suit, probably a rental. "And who is this?" Derek asked, gesturing to Adrian with a dismissive wave. "Did you bring a +1? I didn't think you were seeing anyone. Although, I suppose on those dating apps, it's easy to find someone for the afternoon, right?" The insult was heavy, clumsy. Adrian looked at Derek the way a lion looks at a limping gazelle. He didn't speak immediately. He let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. "I'm Adrian," he said simply, extending a hand, but not shaking Derek's. He just let it hang there until Derek awkwardly grasped it. Adrian's grip was firm, bordering on crushing. "I'm with Sarah." "Adrian," Derek repeated, trying to squeeze back but failing. "What do you do, Adrian? Sarah has a habit of picking up projects." He winked at the crowd. "I should know. I was her biggest project for years." "I work in finance," Adrian said smoothly. "Finance?" Derek laughed. "Bank teller? Loan officer? It's a tough market, buddy. If you need some tips on how to move up, let me know. I've got some pull at Sterling and Cooper." Sarah felt Adrian's muscles tense under his suit jacket, not with anger, but with suppressed laughter. "That's very generous of you," Sarah interjected, her voice dripping with sweet poison. Derek always was, charitable with his advice. "Well, come in, Derek said, ushering them toward the back of the room, away from the VIP section. "There's some seating near the kitchen door. The food is buffet style, so help yourselves. I know you love a buffet, Sarah." He turned his back on them to return to his throne, feeling triumphant. He had done it. He had established the hierarchy. He was the alpha. She was the charity case with the no-name boyfriend. Sarah watched him walk away. She felt a hand on the small of her back. "He offered me career advice," Adrian whispered, his lips brushing her ear. "I think I might keep him as a pet." "Don't eat him yet," Sarah murmured. "Let him get fat on his own ego first." They moved into the room, but they didn't go to the kitchen seats. Adrian steered her directly toward the bar, which was situated right next to where Derek's boss, Mr. Henderson, was standing. As they approached, Mr. Henderson turned. He was mid-laugh, holding a shrimp cocktail. His eyes landed on Adrian. The laugh died in his throat. The shrimp fell from his fingers and landed on his shoe with a wet plop. Henderson knew faces. He read the Wall Street Journal every morning. He knew exactly who Adrian Blackwood was. In fact, Sterling and Cooper had been trying to land a contract with one of Blackwood's subsidiaries for 6 months. Mr. Blackwood," Henderson stammered, his face draining of color. Adrian turned, feigning surprise. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" I'm Tom Henderson, CEO of Sterling and Cooper," the man choked out, wiping his hand frantically on his pants before offering it. "It is an honor, sir. A true honor. I had no idea you were friends with Derek." Derek, seeing his boss bowing and scraping, hurried over, confusion clouding his face. "Tom, what's going on? You know Sarah's friend?" Henderson spun on Derek, his eyes wide with panic. "Friend? Derek, this is Adrian Blackwood. He practically owns the city." Derek froze. The name registered. Blackwood. The name on the top of the building he had interviewed at 5 years ago and didn't even get a call back. The name on the news whenever the stock market rallied. He looked at Sarah. She was sipping a glass of mineral water, looking bored. "And," Adrian added, his voice projecting clearly across the suddenly silent room, "I'm not just Sarah's friend. I'm her employee." "What?" Derek whispered. "Correction," Adrian smiled, a shark baring its teeth. "She runs my life. And since she decided to grace you with her presence today, I decided to tag along. I wanted to see the man who was foolish enough to let Sarah Jenkins go." The air in the room seemed to vanish. "Although," Adrian continued, looking around the tacky ballroom, "I question her judgment in coming here. The aesthetic is a bit early 2000s prom, isn't it?" Sarah stepped forward, closing the distance to Derek. "We brought a gift, Derek." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, flat envelope. She handed it to him. "What is this?" Derek asked, his hands shaking slightly. "It's a gift card," Sarah said. "For Papier & Co. I noticed the invitations. Next time you want to show off, try not to pick the font that's on the discount rack." The room erupted in whispers. Derek stood there, holding the envelope, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. The trap had been sprung, and he hadn't even realized he was standing on the trigger. "Now," Adrian said, clapping his hands together once, "who wants to talk about acquisitions? Mr. Henderson, I believe your firm's lease is up for renewal next month in the Blackwood Tower. We should discuss that." He guided the terrified CEO away, leaving Derek standing alone, eclipsed at his own party. But the real drama was just beginning, because Sarah hadn't just come to embarrass him. She had come with information. And as she looked across the room at Tiffany, who was staring at her with a mixture of hatred and fear, Sarah knew that the secrets in this room were about to spill over like cheap champagne. The atmosphere in the ballroom had shifted from a celebration to a hostage situation. The air conditioning was humming, but Derek was sweating as if he were in a sauna. He watched from across the room as Sarah navigated the crowd. She wasn't just walking, she was holding court. 3 years ago, these same people, Derek's college buddies, his cousins, the wives of his colleagues, had ghosted her. When Derek had painted her as the depressed, unsupportive wife, they had deleted her number, unfollowed her on social media, and looked the other way if they saw her in the grocery store. Now, they circled her like moths to a very expensive flame. "Sarah, it's been ages," chirped Melissa, the wife of Derek's fraternity brother. She reached out to touch the fabric of Sarah's sleeve. "We were just saying how much we missed you. We should do brunch." Sarah looked at Melissa, her expression mild, but her eyes sharp. "Brunch? That's funny, Melissa. I seem to recall calling you the week after Derek moved out. I think you told me you were swamped for the next few years." Melissa turned a shade of pink that clashed with her floral dress. "Oh, you know how it is. Misunderstandings." "I know exactly how it is," Sarah said, her voice smooth and loud enough for the circle to hear. "But I don't do brunch anymore. I mostly do board meetings. Excuse me." She stepped through the gap in the crowd, leaving Melissa gasping for air. Sarah made her way to the throne where Tiffany was sitting. The younger woman was gripping the armrests so hard her knuckles were white. The pile of gifts around her suddenly looked cheap. Blenders and onesies from Target, diaper cakes made of polyester ribbons. Sarah stopped in front of her. Up close, she could see the cracks in the perfection. Tiffany's makeup was flawless, but her eyes were darting nervously toward the bar where Derek was currently being ignored by his own boss. "Hello, Tiffany," Sarah said. Tiffany straightened up, trying to summon the arrogance that had defined their previous interactions. "I didn't think you'd actually come. Derek said he only invited you as a joke." "Derek says a lot of things," Sarah replied calmly. "He also used to say he wanted to wait 10 years before having kids. He told me that for 5 years. Funny how timelines change when the contraception fails, isn't it?" Tiffany's eyes narrowed. "We planned this. We are happy. Unlike you." "Are you?" Sarah glanced around the room. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks less like a celebration and more like a desperate attempt to prove something. Who are you trying to convince, Tiffany? Me? Or yourself?" "You're just jealous," Tiffany spat, her voice rising. "You're jealous that I gave him what you couldn't. A legacy." Sarah laughed softly. It was a genuine laugh, devoid of bitterness. "Tiffany, look at him." She pointed toward the bar. Derek was currently gesturing wildly to Adrian, who looked bored. Derek was trying to salvage his ego, likely bragging about a car he leased or a bonus he hadn't received yet. "He's a drowning man," Sarah said, "and he's using you as a life raft. But here's the twist. You're not a raft. You're an anchor. You both think the other one is the prize. He thinks you come from money because your father owns that dealership in Jersey. You think he's a rising star at Sterling and Cooper." Tiffany froze. "How do you know about my dad?" "I do my due diligence," Sarah said. "It's my job. And I know Derek. I know he hasn't told you about the debt." "Has he? The credit cards he maxed out to pay for the engagement ring? The second mortgage on his parents' house to pay for this rental?" Tiffany's lip quivered. He said he got a promotion, a huge signing bonus." "He lied," Sarah whispered. "There is no bonus. In fact, if he doesn't land the Blackwood account this quarter, he's on a performance improvement plan. He's one bad meeting away from unemployment." Tiffany looked at Derek, then back at Sarah, horror dawning on her face. The security she thought she had stolen was an illusion. "I brought you a gift, though," Sarah said, reaching into her purse again. She pulled out a small velvet box. Tiffany hesitated, then took it. She opened it. Inside was a pacifier, but it wasn't plastic. It was heavy, gold-plated, and encrusted with what looked like diamonds. It was grotesque, flashy, and utterly useless. "It's real gold," Sarah said. "My boss thought it was funny. But there's a receipt inside. It's worth about $5,000. I suggest you return it. You're going to need the cash for the divorce lawyer when you realize he's using your credit score to float his lifestyle." Tiffany stared at the golden pacifier, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't scream. She didn't throw it. She clutched it like a lifeline. "Why are you telling me this?" Tiffany whispered. "Because," Sarah said, leaning in, "I don't hate you. I pity you. You won the prize, Tiffany. You got the man. Now you have to pay for him." Sarah turned on her heel and walked away. She had planted the seed. Now she just had to wait for the roots to tear the foundation apart. While Sarah was dismantling the domestic front, Adrian Blackwood was conducting a hostile takeover of the social dynamic by the bar. Mr. Henderson, the CEO of Sterling and Cooper, was practically vibrating with anxiety. He had spent the last 10 minutes trying to get Adrian to agree to a meeting, sweating through his shirt. Derek, oblivious to the nuances of power, kept trying to interrupt. "So, Adrian," Derek said, forcing a laugh and clapping a hand on Adrian's shoulder, a move that made Henderson wince. "You're in finance? What, hedge funds? Crypto? I dabbled in crypto last year, lost a bit. But you know, scared money doesn't make money, right?" Adrian slowly turned his head to look at Derek's hand until Derek awkwardly removed it. "I don't dabble, Derek," Adrian said. "I control. Right. Control. Love that alpha mindset," Derek said, bobbing his head. "Anyway, Tom here and I were just talking about the Omicron project. It's my baby. Biggest marketing rollout in the tri-state area. I'm leading the team. We're expecting to double revenue by Q4. Henderson looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. He coughed loudly. "Derek, maybe now isn't the time to talk shop." "Nonsense!" Derek beamed, puffing out his chest. "Adrian is a finance guy. He respects the hustle. We're landing the Blackwood Global Logistics contract next week. Once that ink is dry, I'm looking at a VP title, right, Tom?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a diamond. Adrian took a sip of his sparkling water. He set the glass down on the bar with a deliberate clink. "The Blackwood Logistics contract?" Adrian asked, his voice deceptively light. "That's the one," Derek said, winking. "Big fish. But we reeled 'em in." Adrian turned to Henderson. "Tom, is your employee under the impression that Sterling and Cooper is still in the running for that contract?" Henderson's face went grey. "Mr. Blackwood, we haven't received the official rejection yet, so we were still hopeful." "Rejection?" Derek's smile faltered. "What rejection?" "I sent the proposal 2 weeks ago. It was perfect." Adrian turned his body fully toward Derek. The casual slouch was gone. In its place was the posture of a predator who had decided to stop playing with its food. "It wasn't perfect, Derek. It was derivative, poorly costed, and frankly, insulting to my intelligence. The font choice alone was grounds for dismissal." Derek blinked, confused. "Your intelligence? What do you mean?" "It went to the corporate procurement office. Some lady named S. Jenkins." Derek stopped. His eyes widened. The glass in his hand tilted, spilling cheap champagne onto his shoes. S. Jenkins. Sarah Jenkins. He slowly turned his head to look for her. Sarah was standing a few feet away, having just finished her conversation with Tiffany. She was watching them, a serene smile on her face. "No," Derek whispered. "No way." "Sarah is the vice president of strategic operations for Blackwood Global," Adrian said, his voice ringing out clearly. "She filters all major contracts before they reach my desk. She didn't reject your proposal because she's your ex-wife, Derek. She rejected it because she knows you. She knows you cut corners. She knows you overpromise. And she knows you don't read the fine print." The guests nearby had stopped talking. The music seemed to have faded into the background. Everyone was watching the car crash. She's a temp," Derek stammered, his reality fracturing. "She told me she was temping." "I told you I was working on some projects," Sarah corrected, stepping into the circle. "You assumed I was temping because you can't imagine a world where I'm more successful than you." "But I taught you everything," Derek shouted, his control snapping. "I made you. You were nothing when I met you. A little art student with paint on her hands." "And you were a distinctively average account manager," Sarah replied coolly. "The difference is, I grew up. You just got louder." Mr. Henderson saw the ship sinking and decided to save himself. He turned to Derek, his face red with anger. "Derek, did you tell me the Blackwood deal was a sure thing? Did you lie to the partners about the status of the negotiation?" I thought it was," Derek pleaded. "I thought Sarah would, push it through if she saw my name. You thought I would commit corporate nepotism for the man who served me divorce papers via text message?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. "Your risk assessment skills are truly terrible." "Derek," Henderson barked, "step into the hallway. Now." "But my party." "Now!" Henderson roared. Derek looked around the room. He looked at Tiffany, who was clutching the golden pacifier and staring at him with a mixture of horror and calculation. He looked at his friends, who were suddenly very interested in their shoes. He looked at Sarah, who looked like a goddess of vengeance in cream silk. "You did this!" Derek hissed at her. "You came here to ruin me." "I came here to wish you well," Sarah said innocently, "and to give you a gift. Did you open yours yet?" Derek looked down at the envelope she had given him earlier. He tore it open with trembling fingers. It wasn't a gift card for stationery, as she had joked. It was a legal document. "What is this?" Derek asked, squinting at the paper. "It's a release form," Sarah explained. "The car you're leasing? The Porsche? It's leased through a subsidiary of Blackwood Finance. You've missed 3 payments, Derek. My team flagged it last week. Usually we just repossess it in the middle of the night. But since I was in the neighborhood, I thought I'd save you the towing fee. Hand over the keys." The silence in the room was absolute. "You can't be serious," Derek whispered. "Adrian?" Sarah looked at her boss. Adrian held out her hand. "Keys, Derek. Unless you want the police involved for Grand Theft Auto. We technically own the vehicle as of yesterday." Derek looked at the crowd. He looked at the keys in his pocket. He was trapped. Slowly, painfully, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the Porsche fob. He dropped it into Adrian's hand. "Thank you," Adrian said, pocketing them. "We'll have someone pick it up from the driveway. You might need to call an Uber to get home. Oh, wait, you are home, in this rental, which, by the way, has a strict no-party policy in the lease agreement. I should know. I wrote the bylaws for the holding company." Adrian looked at Henderson. "Tom, I think you have some HR issues to discuss with your employee. Sarah and I have a helicopter to catch." "Helicopter?" Tiffany's voice piped up from the throne, small and shaky. "Yes," Sarah said, looking at the young woman. "We have a dinner reservation in Manhattan. Good luck with the baby, Tiffany. And seriously, cash that pacifier." Sarah turned to Adrian. "Ready?" "After you," Adrian said. They walked out of the ballroom, their footsteps echoing on the marble. Behind them, the sounds of an argument erupted, Henderson yelling, Derek shouting, and Tiffany crying. It was a symphony of chaos, and Sarah Jenkins was the conductor who had just laid down her baton. As they stepped out into the cool Hamptons air, the valet was waiting by the Rolls-Royce. "Actually," Adrian said to the valet, "keep it running. We're going to the helipad." They slid into the back seat. The door closed, shutting out the noise of the party. Sarah let out a long breath and slumped slightly against the leather seat. Was that too much? Adrian looked at her, a smirk playing on his lips. Too much? Sarah, that was art. I particularly liked the part about the car. We don't actually own the leasing company for his Porsche, do we? Sarah smiled, a wicked, brilliant thing. No. But he doesn't know that, and he is 3 months behind. I saw the notices on his kitchen counter when I went to pick up my last box of books 3 years ago. I just took a lucky guess that he hadn't changed his habits. Adrian threw his head back and laughed. You are terrifying. Remind me never to cross you. You're safe, Sarah said, looking out the window as the mansion faded into the distance, as long as you give me a raise. Done, Adrian said instantly. Double. Effective today. But the story wasn't over. Derek wasn't the type to go down without a fight, and Tiffany was about to make a move that no one expected. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, a figure watched them from the balcony, phone in hand, dialing a number that would bring the drama from the Hamptons right back to the heart of New York City, while Sarah and Adrian were ascending 3,000 feet above the Long Island Sound in a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter. Derek Caldwell was experiencing a rapid, ungraceful descent back to earth. The ballroom at the Kensington estate had emptied out with embarrassing speed. Guests, sensing the radioactive levels of awkwardness, had muttered excuses about babysitters and traffic, grabbing their party favors and fleeing. Derek stood in the center of the debris, half-eaten crab cakes, crumpled napkins, and the ruins of his reputation. "You're fired, Derek," Mr. Henderson said, his voice flat. He wasn't yelling anymore. He was putting on his coat. "Don't come in on Monday. I'll have HR courier your personal effects to your apartment. If you try to contact any of our clients, especially Blackwood, our legal team will bury you so deep you'll need a mining permit to find sunlight." "Tom, please," Derek begged, sweating through his linen suit. "It was a misunderstanding. She's vindictive. She set me up." "She didn't set you up to lie to me about a contract negotiation," Henderson said, buttoning his coat. "You did that all by yourself. You're a liability." Henderson walked out, not looking back. Derek turned to Tiffany. She was still sitting on the throne, staring at the golden pacifier in her lap. She looked like a child whose ice cream had fallen in the sand. "Babe," Derek said, rushing over to her. "Babe, listen. It's going to be okay. Henderson is an idiot. I was going to quit anyway. I'll start my own firm. We'll be fine." Tiffany looked up. Her eyes were dry and hard. "You leased the Porsche." Well, it's a tax thing," Derek lied, his eyes darting around. "It makes sense for the write-offs." "And the payments?" Tiffany asked. "Sarah said you missed 3. "She's lying. She's trying to break us up," Derek shouted, grabbing her hand. Tiffany pulled it away as if he were burning hot. "My dad checked your credit score before the wedding," Tiffany said quietly. "He told me it was low. You said it was because of identity theft. You said Sarah ruined your credit." "She did. She—" "Stop it," Tiffany snapped, standing up. "Just stop lying. For 1 second." She looked around the empty hall. "We have to pay for this venue by 5 p.m. or they charge the card on file. The card on file is my card, Derek, because yours was declined." "I'll transfer you the money," Derek promised. "You don't have the money," Tiffany said. She picked up her purse and the golden pacifier. "I'm going to my parents' house in Jersey. Do not follow me." "Tiffany, you're carrying my son." "I'm carrying a son," she corrected, walking toward the exit. "Right now, I'm not sure whose last name he's going to have." Derek watched her leave. He was alone. The silence of the estate was mocking him. He walked over to the bar, grabbed a bottle of warm champagne, and chugged from it. Panic began to set in. He had no job, no car. His wife had left him, and he was stuck in the Hamptons with a $60,000 bill for a party that had lasted 45 minutes. But as the alcohol hit his bloodstream, the panic turned into something darker. Rage. Sarah had done this. She had marched in here with her billionaire boss and humiliated him. It wasn't fair. She was a nobody. She was the girl who used to clip coupons for pasta sauce. How dare she? He pulled out his phone. He had a contact, a guy he used to drink with, who now worked for the New York Tatler, a vicious gossip rag that loved to tear down the rich and famous. Derek dialed the number. "Yeah?" A raspy voice answered. "Mike, it's Derek. I've got a story for you," Derek said, his voice trembling with malice. "It's about Adrian Blackwood, and how he's abusing his power to harass a pregnant woman and destroy a family. It's a kinda Me Too story, Mike, or something like it. I want to burn them down." Meanwhile, in the sky, the atmosphere was very different. Sarah stared out the window at the glittering skyline of Manhattan approaching in the distance. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her feeling hollow and exhausted. "You're quiet," Adrian observed. He was reading a briefing on his tablet, but he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. "Just thinking," Sarah said. "About him?" "About how small he looked," Sarah admitted. "I spent 3 years thinking he was this monster who broke me. But today, he was just a pathetic man in a bad suit." "Perspective is a powerful thing," Adrian said. He set the tablet down. "You were excellent today, Sarah. I mean that. The way you handled the contract revelation? Ruthless. I was proud." Sarah turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. "You weren't so bad yourself. I question her judgment in coming here." "That was mean. It was necessary," Adrian shrugged. "But I have a question. Shoot." "Why did you really invite me?" Adrian asked. His dark eyes locked onto hers. "You could have taken anyone. You could have hired an actor. Why me?" Sarah felt her breath hitch. Because you're the only person who knows how hard I've worked to rebuild myself, and because," she hesitated, "because I knew you wouldn't let me fall. If I panicked, if I froze, I knew you'd take over." Adrian reached across the small space between the seats. His hand covered hers. His skin was warm, his grip firm. "I will always have your back, Sarah. You know that." The air in the cabin grew thick with unspoken tension. For 2 years they had danced around this. The late nights at the office, the shared dinners over takeout containers, the way he looked at her when she solved a problem no one else could. "Adrian," she whispered. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers for permission. "Sarah, Psst. Psst." Sarah's phone vibrated violently against her leg. The moment shattered. She pulled back, flustered. "I'm sorry, I should check that. It might be the Tokyo team." Adrian sat back, a mask of composure sliding back into place, though his jaw was tight. "Of course, work first." Sarah looked at her phone. It wasn't Tokyo. It was a Google alert she had set up for Blackwood Global. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Adrian asked, seeing her expression. It's fast," Sarah murmured. "How did he do it this fast?" "Who?" "Derek." She handed the phone to Adrian. The headline from the online edition of the New York Tatler screamed in bold red letters, "Billionaire bully. Adrian Blackwood crashes baby shower, mocks pregnant mother, and fires father on the spot." Adrian read the article quickly. It was a masterpiece of fiction. It claimed Adrian and his mistress, Sarah Jenkins, had drunkenly invaded a private family event, thrown insults at the pregnant wife, and used financial leverage to force the husband's firing. There was even a blurry photo of Adrian laughing at the bar, taken out of context to look maniacal, and a photo of Tiffany crying. "He's spinning it," Adrian said, his voice dangerously calm. "He's playing the victim." "The board is going to see this," Sarah said, panic rising. "The investors, the merger with the Japanese firm, they value honor and family reputation above everything. If they think you're a home wrecker who bullies pregnant women—" "Sarah, breathe." "I have to fix this," Sarah said, unbuckling her seatbelt as the helicopter began its descent onto the roof of the Blackwood Tower. "I dragged you into this. This is my mess." "We will fix it," Adrian corrected. "Together." "No," Sarah said, her eyes hardening. "He attacked you to get to me. I need to handle this, and I know exactly who can help." Monday morning at Blackwood Global was usually a quiet affair, a symphony of typing and espresso machines. Today it was a war zone. The PR department was in a frenzy. The Tatler article had been picked up by other outlets. Yashka Boycott Blackwood was trending on Twitter, fueled by bots and outraged users who only read headlines. Sarah sat in her office, staring at the chaos on her screens. She hadn't slept. She had spent the last 24 hours digging. The door flew open. It was Marcus, the VP of Public Relations. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Sarah, the board is calling an emergency meeting in an hour," Marcus said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "They want Adrian's head. They're talking about a leave of absence until the investigation is complete. You know what that means. It's a soft firing." "They won't fire him," Sarah said, not looking up from her keyboard. "They might," Marcus argued. "The stock is down 4% this morning. The Japanese investors have paused the deal. Derek Caldwell is on Good Morning America right now, crying crocodile tears about how he's just a simple man, crushed by the corporate elite." Sarah grabbed the remote and turned on the TV mounted on her wall. There he was, Derek, sitting on a beige couch opposite a sympathetic host. He wasn't wearing his flashy suit today. He was wearing a simple sweater, looking disheveled and humble. "I just wanted to celebrate my son," Derek was saying, wiping a fake tear. "And they came in, like they owned the place. Sarah, my ex-wife, she's changed. She's been corrupted by that world. And Mr. Blackwood, he laughed at us. He laughed at my wife's registry." Sarah turned the TV off. "He's good. I'll give him that. He's a sociopath, but he's a good actor." "Sarah, what are we going to do?" Marcus asked. "Send Adrian to the board meeting," Sarah said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "Tell him to stall them for 30 minutes. I have a meeting of my own." "With who?" "With the only witness who matters." "30 minutes later, the conference room on the 50th floor was like a courtroom. The 12 board members sat around the long oak table, looking grim. Adrian sat at the head, calm and impassive, though his knuckles were white as he gripped his pen. "This is unacceptable conduct, Adrian," said Alderman Sterling, no relation to Derek's firm. "A crusty old billionaire. Personal vendettas? Crashing parties? We are a trillion-dollar entity, not a soap opera." "The allegations are false," Adrian said steadily. "Mr. Caldwell is a disgruntled former employee of a vendor we just cut ties with. This is retaliation." "The public doesn't care about the truth," another board member snapped. "They care about the optics, and right now, you look like a villain." The door to the conference room opened. "I'm sorry, gentlemen and ladies," Sarah's voice cut through the tension. She walked in, holding a thick file folder. "I have some supplementary materials for this meeting." "Ms. Jenkins," Sterling grunted, "you are at the center of this scandal. Perhaps you should step out." "I think you'll want to hear this," Sarah said, placing the folder on the table. "Because I didn't come alone." She stepped aside and held the door open. Tiffany Caldwell walked in. The room went silent. Tiffany looked tired. She wasn't wearing makeup. She wore a simple coat and jeans. She looked nervous, clutching her purse. But when she saw Adrian, she nodded respectfully. "Who is this?" Sterling asked. "This is Tiffany Caldwell," Sarah announced. "The victim from the news." Tiffany cleared her throat. "Hi." "Mrs. Caldwell," Adrian said, standing up. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't do it for you," Tiffany said, her voice shaking slightly. She looked at Sarah. "I did it because Sarah showed me the credit card statements." Sarah turned to the board. "Mr. Caldwell claims we harassed him and got him fired without cause. Tiffany is here to testify that Derek Caldwell has been embezzling funds from their joint accounts to pay for gambling debts and, more importantly, was recorded on the venue's security cameras, admitting to his boss that he lied about the Blackwood contract." Sarah pulled a USB drive from her pocket. "We bought the security footage from the Kensington estate this morning. It has audio." She plugged it into the laptop connected to the projector. On the screen, grainy but clear footage played. It showed Derek at the bar, shouting at Mr. Henderson, I thought she'd push it through. She's my ex." Derek's voice on the recording was shrill. "I lied to the partners. So what? Everybody lies." Then, the footage skipped to the parking lot, after Sarah and Adrian had left. Derek was on the phone with the reporter. "Yeah, make it sound bad, Mike. Make him look like a monster. I want a payout. I want hush money. If I can scare Blackwood, maybe they'll settle for a couple million to make me go away." The board members gasped. Sarah paused the video. "Attempted extortion," Sarah said. "Defamation. Fraud." She turned to Tiffany. "And Tiffany?" Tiffany stepped forward. "Derek told me he was a vice president. He told me he was rich. I found out yesterday he took out a second mortgage on my parents' home without their consent by forging my father's signature. Sarah, Ms. Jenkins, helped me find the paperwork." Tiffany looked at the board members. "My husband is a liar. Mr. Blackwood was nothing but polite to me. He even—" She reached into her pocket and pulled out the golden pacifier. He allowed Sarah to give me this, to help with the baby. The room was dead silent. Sterling cleared his throat. He looked at the footage of Derek plotting extortion. He looked at the weeping, pregnant woman. "Well," Sterling said, adjusting his tie, "it appears we have been misinformed. Our legal team is already drafting a defamation suit against Mr. Caldwell and the New York Tatler," Adrian said, his voice returning to its usual command. "I suggest we release this footage to the press immediately. The narrative will shift from billionaire bully to corporate hero exposes conman." The board members nodded in agreement. The tension evaporated, replaced by the shark-like scent of a legal victory. Sarah guided Tiffany toward the door. "Thank you, Tiffany. My assistant has the number for that divorce attorney I mentioned. He's the best in the city, and he owes me a favor. He'll do it pro bono." Tiffany stopped and looked at Sarah. "You didn't have to help me, after how I treated you. We've both been conned by the same man," Sarah said softly. "Us girls have to stick together." As the board meeting dispersed, Adrian walked over to Sarah. The room was empty now, save for the two of them. "You saved the company," Adrian said. "I cleaned up the mess," Sarah corrected. "No," Adrian said. He walked around the table until he was standing right in front of her. "You protected me. No one has ever done that before. Usually, I'm the shield." He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The electricity was back, stronger than in the helicopter. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, "when this blows over, I don't want to be just your boss anymore." Sarah looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "And what do you want to be?" "I want to be the +1 you actually deserve," he said. And then, in the middle of the corporate boardroom, with the ghosts of a crisis fading into the background, Adrian Blackwood kissed her. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a merger of equals, passionate, claiming, and inevitable. But as they pulled apart, breathless, Sarah's phone buzzed again. She laughed breathlessly. "If that's Derek, I'm going to throw this phone out the window." She checked the screen. It wasn't Derek. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think you won? You just made a martyr out of me. Check the news. I'm not done." Sarah frowned. "He's persistent. He's desperate," Adrian said, reading the text over her shoulder. What could he possibly do now? "He's going to play the mental health card," Sarah predicted. "Or he's going to try to physically intimidate us." "Let him try," Adrian said, his eyes darkening. "He forgets one thing." "What's that?" "I have unlimited resources, and I have you." Derek Caldwell did not go quietly. True to his text message, he decided that if he couldn't be the hero of his own story, He would be the victim of the century. 2 days after the board meeting, the lobby of the Blackwood Tower on Fifth Avenue was a circus. Derek had tipped off every news outlet in the city. He stood in the center of the polished atrium, wearing the same disheveled sweater he had worn on TV, holding a megaphone. Beside him stood a lawyer who looked like he chased ambulances for a living. A crowd had gathered, tourists, office workers, and a phalanx of cameras. "They ruined my life!" Derek shouted into the megaphone, his voice cracking theatrically. "Adrian Blackwood and Sarah Jenkins, they used their billions to crush a working man. They stole my wife. They stole my job. I am here to demand justice. I am here to demand a settlement for the pain and suffering inflicted upon a father-to-be." Up on the 42nd floor, Adrian watched the feed from the security cameras on his monitor. His jaw was set in a hard line. "Security is ready to remove him," Adrian said. "We can have him arrested for trespassing in 30 seconds. Sarah stood by the window, looking down at the ants crawling on the pavement below. "No," she said. "If we drag him out, the cameras will capture Big Bad Blackwood manhandling a crying man. That's exactly what he wants. He wants the visual of oppression. So we just let him scream?" "No," Sarah said, turning around. She picked up a thick manila envelope from her desk. "We go down there. And we don't just evict him, we expose him. Sarah, it's dangerous. He's unstable." "He's not unstable, Adrian. He's broke," Sarah said coldly. "And I have the one thing that stops men like Derek, dead in their tracks. Which is the receipts." Sarah adjusted her blazer, checked her reflection in the mirror. She looked impeccable, a stark contrast to Derek's manufactured poverty, and headed for the elevator. Adrian followed, signaling his head of security to flank them. When the elevator doors opened in the lobby, the noise was deafening. But as Sarah and Adrian stepped out, a hush rippled through the crowd. The sea of reporters parted. Derek saw them. He raised his megaphone. "There she is, the Ice Queen herself. Come to laugh at me again, Sarah." Sarah walked straight toward him, stopping 10 feet away. The cameras flashed blindingly. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She looked like a disappointed teacher. "Put the megaphone down, Derek," Sarah said, her voice projecting clearly in the sudden silence. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing you," Derek sneered, emboldened by the cameras. "I'm suing you for $10 million, for emotional distress, for wrongful termination." "You weren't terminated for wrongful reasons," Sarah said calmly. "You were terminated because you embezzled $150,000 from Sterling and Cooper's client accounts." The crowd gasped. Derek's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. "Lies. Slander. Prove it." "I don't have to prove it to the press," Sarah said. She held up the envelope. "I already proved it to the district attorney." Derek froze. "What?" "I spent the last 48 hours with the forensic accountants at Sterling and Cooper," Sarah explained, her voice steady. "We found the wire transfers. You were moving client retainers into a shell company called DC Ventures. You used that money to pay for the Kensington rental. You used it to lease the Porsche. You used it to buy that ridiculous engagement ring. You can't," Derek stammered, lowering the megaphone. "It's wire fraud, Derek," Sarah continued, stepping closer. "It's a federal crime, 18 U.S. Code Section 1443, up to 20 years in prison." Derek looked at his lawyer. The lawyer was already backing away, trying to blend into the crowd of tourists. I can pay it back," Derek whispered, the microphone catching his desperate plea. "I just need a settlement." "There is no settlement," Adrian stepped in, his voice deep and final. "We didn't call the police to remove you for trespassing, Derek." As if on cue, the revolving doors of the lobby spun open. 4 NYPD officers walked in, accompanied by a detective in a cheap suit. "Derek Caldwell?" the detective asked. Derek dropped the megaphone. It clattered loudly on the marble floor. "You have the right to remain silent," the detective recited, pulling out handcuffs. The cameras went wild. The flashbulbs were a strobe light of humiliation. Derek wasn't a martyr anymore. He was a criminal. As the officers turned him around and cuffed his hands behind his back, he looked over his shoulder at Sarah. There was no hate left in his eyes, just fear. "Sarah," he pleaded. "Sarah, please, help me." Sarah looked at the man she had wasted 5 years of her life on. She remembered the nights she cried because he told her she wasn't good enough. She remembered the loneliness. She looked at him, and she felt nothing. "I did help you, Derek," she said softly. "I stopped you before you could steal enough to get a life sentence." The police dragged him away. The crowd began to disperse. The show over. Adrian put his arm around Sarah's shoulders. "You okay?" Sarah took a deep breath. The air in the lobby felt lighter. "I'm hungry," she said. "I think I want that brunch now." And that is how Sarah Jenkins turned a nightmare baby shower into the ultimate power move. She didn't just survive her ex-husband's toxicity. She dismantled it, piece by piece, with class, intelligence, and a little help from a billionaire. It's a reminder that when someone tries to bury you, you have to realize you're a seed. Derek tried to parade her as a failure, but he only succeeded in showcasing her success. What would you have done in Sarah's shoes? Would you have helped Tiffany, or would you have let her sink with Derek? And honestly, was the golden pacifier too petty, or was it the perfect touch? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of corporate revenge and redemption, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new dramas every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, success is the best revenge.